Alright, it's obvious the Clips are still in an adjustment period on offense, because without Harden's and Zoo's two-man game, they basically lost their system overnight, and I can tell they're still trying to figure out a new one. Besides Kawhi and Dunn, they don't really have other trusted ball handlers, so until Garland is healthy, or at least until Matherin is with the team, I think their half-court will continue experimenting and having some stagnation issues because they basically have to rely on Kawhi. Instead of running as many ball screens, I noticed they ran a lot of horns or pistols and were using Brook at the elbows, so Kawhi was getting zips or backsides to get to his right, but those weren't that effective because the Wolves were having their big switch a good amount. His best scoring opportunities were really on his ones because they were only loading up, so that was allowing him to play in his spots, and I couldn't understand that because he was the only player that could single-handedly beat them. Instead of selling the force the others on the Clips into beating them, they decided not to, and what made it worse was them not adjusting their matchups, because with Brook as a spot up, that forced Rudy out on the perimeter, so he couldn't help around the paint at all. They could have just easily assigned him to DJJ or John Collins to keep him as the low man as often as possible, because they were already switching 1 through 5 a lot of the times, so there was no reason not to. But by not doing that, and by not willing to commit any hard doubles, Kawhi just got to eat throughout. By the time they could stop him, it was already too late, because they were already down 20 to 30 in the fourth, so those misses didn't even matter, and the others on the Clips were already rolling. The reason for that was because the Clips didn't even need to rely on their half-court scoring throughout the night. They were able to catch the Wolves' defense not being set a lot of the times, so they were getting quick buckets in transition, and every time the Wolves had a quick lapse in focus, they capitalized on those too. The Clips' defense was basically their best source of offense, because as expected, the principles on that end are still the same, and they still have the same personnel to execute, so their shell remained consistent. That was a contrast compared to the Wolves' defense, because I don't think they matched the Clips' effort at all, and I think a big reason for that was their offense bleeding over, so they were letting their misses on that end affect their effort on the other. In their screening actions, they couldn't exploit the Clips' bigs dropping, and whenever the Clips' bigs were showing, they couldn't exploit that coverage either, because first, the Clips' bigs can slide their feet, especially Niederhauser. Then second, the Clips have some of the best backside rotations, so the Clips were blowing up a lot of those. The Clips like to be heavy in the gaps, and they're very handsy, on or off the rock, so they make it hard to attack any driving lanes, because they are always ready to show or peel for one another. The Wolves just couldn't unlock their driving kick, because they couldn't shift the Clips' shell consistently, so a lot of times, they were having to settle for the first look, and those were usually from deep, or were tough shots. And couldn't even bail him out, because he couldn't exploit the Clips' bigs coverages, or some matchups he tried to hunt, and Dunn and DJJ were giving him hell. So same as the Clips, the Wolves also had to rely on transition opportunities. In the first half, the Clips were having turnover issues, because they're still acclimating to their new offense, so fortunately, the Wolves were able to capitalize on those, but unfortunately, theirs were even worse, and that negated any advantage they could have gotten in that category. Once the Clips cleaned up their turnovers in the second half, the Wolves really struggled to score, and it took until the fourth before they could do so, because they started making tough shots, but same as their stops, those were also a little too late. Their best chance of running it back was really in the third, because on the one possession Ant was able to blow by DJJ, he punched it on Brook, and in a single-digit game, that could have been the play they needed to shift the momentum in their favor, but it somehow did the opposite, so they should have probably locked in more on their defense to compensate for their offense the way the Clips did. Just watch the tape.